Welcome. It's another edition of Global Business. I am Imewari Ohiomokai. Today on the program, which I'm looking at the Audit Service Commission amended bill. About 4 to 5 years ago, this bill was presented to the National Assembly and it went through both houses. Of course, it was passed and presented to President Muhammadu Buhari. But the president refused assent to the bill. That is after all was done. I mean, they investigated how it came about. They investigated the issues that may have arisen at the National Assembly. And some people say that this bill, it was expected to have been stopped at the National Assembly, but where it has stopped, especially considering the stance of this government against corruption, is very surprising. In fact, shocking. We're talking to two guests on the program, and they'll be telling us what exactly it is about this bill that may have prevented President Muhammadu Buhari to have stopped or not assented to the bill. We'll also be looking at what is next after this bill has been foreclosed for the last assembly. It's a lot to take in this program. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome again.
As we take on the issue of auditing on the program today, let us go back in time and see history. Historically, auditing has been an important part of public administration for a long time, going back to early centuries in Egypt, China, and Korea. Early emperors and pharaohs wanted to know if their assets were being protected, so auditors were sent out to ensure that rice was stored as reported and that taxes were being collected properly. In 18th century Europe, audit systems were developed that focused very much on compliance with rules and regulations decreed by various rulers. In the Anglo-Saxon tradition, the notion of compliance with laws was extended to auditing financial accounts and giving opinions on the fairness of account presentations. In the latter part of the 20th century, the notion of auditing performance and operations emerged and became an important part of the audit process. In the 1960s and 1970s, parliamentarians were looking for reliable data to assure Parliament and executive government was accountable for its programs, and taxpayers were calling for a more efficient and less expensive government. As a result, industrialized countries' supreme audit institutions made considerable progress in developing and experimenting with performance auditing methods and techniques. Criteria for measuring government performance were established. Methodological criteria for measuring government performance were established. Methodological approaches were invented and applied, and performance indicators were developed. Concepts of significance and indicators for economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, sometimes referred to as the 3 E's, were explored and developed. These efforts improved the audit reporting about government operations, most notably in Canada, Sweden, United Kingdom, and the United States. Now, performance auditing is widespread in Europe, North America, Australia, and New Zealand, and is emerging in Asia and South Africa.
Right at this spot, when Jokunwe came from many villages away, still come here for safety. It is said that when shots of bullets are coming, if you come into the spot, you are safe. This documentary you're about to watch is about how history has made a place and made a people. If you didn't know, on the 6th of January, the president was given the bill, the amended Audit Service Commission bill. And we know that on the 9th of January, it came to the president's table, but he refused assent to that bill. We'll be investigating issues that led to that bill getting to the National Assembly, also getting to the president, and his refusal. First, to look at this issue is Segun Elemo. He is the Executive Director of Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative right here in Abuja, and also with administrative headquarters in Ibadan. So Segun, thank you very much for coming on the program. Now, let's look at the issue of the president's refusal to assent to this bill. Why do you think the president has refused? Or why has the president said he refused?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the program. There are many reasons that one can deduce from the president not assenting to the bill. But I think it will be assuming for the president himself, who has the constitutional right to assent to the bill, because he hasn't even given any reason. What for me could possibly be the reason, we could say, maybe not directly from the president, maybe the people around him, but what I know is that the bill was sent to him on the 6th of January, it got to him. It was confirmed to have gotten to the presidency on the 9th of January. Though it was sent on the 6th of January, the president, the presidency requested review within 48 hours from key government institutions like the Attorney General for the Federation and some other relevant government agencies to review the bill and to advise the president on whether to go ahead and assent. And from the information I got is that all the reviews came in within 48 hours, including that of the Attorney General. And it was positive that the president should go ahead and assent to the bill. Why the president refused assent, up to now is not clear to anyone. We've tried to speak with those who speak for the president, and they couldn't offer any explanation as to why the president has withheld assent. Another issue on that is that because the constitutional provision is that within 30 days, the president should communicate to the National Assembly on whether he has assented or withheld assent to a particular bill. And in the case where he withholds assent, he should give the reason to the National Assembly, which he did not do, and up to now he hasn't. So we could say in one way that the president is in violation of the Constitution.
Were there political undertones to this bill that may have disturbed its assent?
Certainly, a bill like this must have some, political interest, must attract some political interest, because we're talking about a bill now that is going to empower the foremost accountability office in the country to now begin to deal with the issue of corruption from a preventive, angle, and not just a reactive steps. Because what the Auditor General does, or what he's supposed to be doing, is to prevent corruption, not to fight corruption. Is to stop corruption from happening in the first place. And what the audit bill would have done is to, it would have empowered that office to be first and foremost financially independent, administratively, independent, because those two things are very vital to the Office of the Auditor General. I mean, you can't be saying that you are fighting corruption and then the foremost accountability office is not financially independent, in the sense that he gets his money from the Ministry of Finance on a monthly basis or something. Just like every other ministries, departments, and agencies of government, which is not supposed to be so. In terms of recruitment of the personnel for the Office of the Auditor General, he doesn't do that. The Office of the Federal Civil Service does that for it. So whether the Office of the Federal Civil Service has the competence to be able to recruit for the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation is an issue on its own. So those two things, would have been sorted out, with this audit bill if the president had assented to it. So, but by and large, why I said there must have been some political interest is because certainly because of some of the relevant provisions in that bill. Say, for instance, some parastatals who don't submit audited accounts to the Auditor General for review will now be mandated. I mean, parastatals like the Niger Delta Development Commission, like the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, and the likes. Revenue generating agencies who just make money and spend money, they will now be forced to submit their audited accounts to the Auditor General for review. I believe some of those issues must have been the reason why those power players decided to step down the bill.
Okay, so now just tell us about this bill. Tell us about it. Tell us about the original bill, which I know is an amended bill that was sent to the National Assembly. Let's trace the history of this bill.
The Audit Service Commission Bill 2018 is to, number one, repeal the 1956 Audit Act. Now, when you look at it, Nigeria got independence in 1960. The audit instrument, the legal instrument for the audit office, is a pre-independence audit law. 1956. Can a 1956 provision, legal provisions, deal with modern corruption challenges? No. We have another, bylaw, Ordinance Act, Audit Cap P35 LFN 2004, that also deals with audit issues. So the Audit Service Commission Bill 2018 is meant to repeal some of those two instruments and then replace it with the new provision. What the new provision, now when you look at the Audit Ordinance Act of 1956, it doesn't capture the accountability challenges that we now have in our hands. And what this new law would have done is that, like I mentioned, it would have, empowered the office. And it's important to say that it's the office that is empowered, not the person. It would have empowered the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation to do the things, especially to foster, to improve on the anti-corruption agenda of Mr. President. Because you can't be pushing an agenda to fight corruption, and then the number one office that is supposed to implement that agenda is not given the necessary support to be able to do that. All of this would have been sorted out in the new Audit Service Commission Bill. Another issue, which may have been one of the reasons why the president refused assent. I wouldn't even say the president refused assent, because we don't even know the president. Because when we say the president refused assent, we should say that authoritatively. We should hinge that on the statement of the president saying, "I have refused assent." Now we don't know what has happened to that bill, and has never happened. There's no provision in the Constitution for this kind of scenario. I mean, the Constitution does not envisage that at a point there will be a silence on a bill that goes from the National Assembly to the President. What the Constitution provides for is for assent and non-assent. The Constitution does not provide for silence. So we shouldn't speak for Mr. President. We should allow Mr. President to speak for himself, or speak through his aides and say, I have refused assent. And if he does that now, that will be after 11 months, since the bill was sent to him. But I think one other issue I wanted to mention about is, there was this fear that whether the Audit Service Commission bill, the word commission, and whether the status of that office, if the president had assented to that bill, was going to be as the same or at par with the Federal Civil Service Commission. I think those are very basic issues that shouldn't even attract our attention if we are serious about fighting corruption. Because if we are really serious, we shouldn't look at whether something attains a particular status or an office attains it. What we should be focusing on is how do we empower this office to do the work that it needs to do. Say, for instance, in the US, you have the Government Accountability Office. The Government Accountability Office, when you look at what it does for the US government, if you check the website of the Government Accountability Office, for instance, you will see the recoveries. You will see the monies that are recovered for government, for the federal government. And that's how it's able to justify its budgetary provisions annually. Between 2012 and 2017, the budget of the Office of the Director General for the Federation went down from 5 billion to 2-point-something billion. Now, when you check that with the fact that the Audit Service Commission bill was not assented to, you can deduce what is happening. People were cutting the budget of that office before even we presented this new bill. So, in essence, whether at this administration or previous administration, people don't want that office to function and to function effectively. And there's no how you're going to fight corruption. There's no how you're going to, foster accountability. There's no how you're going to ensure value for money in terms of public spending if you don't put this office, to use properly. So I think those are some of the issues, which ordinarily would have been sorted out with this bill. But there's nothing to say now. I mean, with the way the Constitution is structured, once the administration winds down, the whole thing starts all over again. But it's painful that it took us 4 years since the bill was first mentioned at the National Assembly. Since 2015, it took us 4 years to get to where we got to in January 2019. But unfortunately, for us in the civil society, we did not even see any challenge on the part of the president assenting to that bill, because we felt the bill was fostering his agenda of anti-corruption. The places we thought were going to have obstacles, eventually we were able to scale through. But where we never thought, and that's how life is sometimes, where we never thought we would have obstacle, we had the obstacle waiting for us there. So.
Thank you very much, Segun Lemo, Executive Director of Paradigm Leadership Support Initiative, PLSI, for talking with us. We're still on the program and investigating the issue of the Audit Service Commission bill.
Okay, my name is Benjamin Ikeyi. I am a public financial management expert. I also do legislative strengthening and legislative policy analysis. So basically, these are my areas of focus. Of course, generally, I also handle issues around governance and development. There are quite a lot of differences, and the differences are wide. The essence of the audit bill is to strengthen transparency and accountability, is to help curb corruption. So one of the number one differences, the number one gaps between these countries and Nigeria is the fact that they have been able to a large extent fight corruption from the point of the audit process. And I'll give example of a few countries. Let me start from our very close neighbors here, Ghana. Ghana has an audit bill, a functional audit bill, and they have an auditor general who is independent. They have an audit service commission that runs the auditor general's office. And this has helped that country to a large extent to fight corruption. But you see, my brother, let's first even understand the audit process. The essence of the audit process after the Auditor General does his job is to send his report to the National Assembly. The National Assembly looks at his report through the Public Accounts Committee, and whatever flaws is discovered feeds into the next year's budget. And how does that happen? If Ministry A is found to have misappropriated a certain amount, that amount is expected to be deducted from the next year's budget until they are able to clear that. That helps to fight corruption in a very large way. And that is what Ghana is doing today. They also have specialized, the audit office is not like any other service, any other office in the civil service. They have special job that they do. And in Ghana, because they have an audit service commission, the audit service commission employs qualified staff for the audit office. It doesn't just stop there. It also ensures that there are adequate staff to handle the audit process. And then, of course, they are paid well so that they can do their job well. That is one. In South Africa, they have an audit law, and the audit law has also helped the Auditor General to function independently without recourse to the executive. Now, what the audit bill does is to give the Auditor General administrative and financial autonomy. His budget is a one-line item in the national budget. So he doesn't have to go cap in hand begging the persons he's going to audit. This is what happens in Nigeria now. So he goes cap in hand begging the Ministry of Finance to release his money. And where there is issues around the spending of money in the Ministry of Finance, how does he do that? Does he look into that? So this is the terrible gap that this audit process, audit bill, the non-signing of this audit bill has cost Nigeria. Also, let me mention the issue of rating. Within the Supreme Audit Institutions family, globally, in Africa, our rating is so poor. Globally, we're actually nowhere to be found in terms of our rating because of that audit bill that we don't have. And you see, a lot of countries look up to Nigeria to learn from us, to be able to glean ideas from us. And when we don't have an audit bill, and where we don't have an audit bill, it sort of dents our image and sort of diminishes our respect in the Committee of Nations. So these are some of the, I don't want to go into countries like the UK and Canada and others where democracy, so to say, is strong and firm, but within us in Africa, these are countries that have gone so far in terms of what they are doing, fighting corruption, ensuring transparency and accountability in the use of public funds through an audit law. For me, my advice has always been that there should be bilateral discussion between the legislature and the executive. Because of the nature of our democracy, every bill that is passed by the House has to go to the president for his assent. Although the law says if the president does not assent to it after 30 days, the House has a right to veto his assent. But I feel that before we go into that, there should be first and foremost bilateral discussion between the executive and the legislature and the Auditor General's office. What is the purpose of this? It is to find the gray areas in the bill that was originally sent to Mr. President to sign. A bill is never completely perfect, and that is why there is a word called amendment. If some people have seen some areas that need to be amended even before the president assents to it, let us come to the table and talk about it. What are these areas that you have seen? How do we get over this area? How do we accommodate your views, your concerns, and then you also accommodate our views? We are talking about this country, Nigeria. We are talking about the resources of Nigeria, not the resources of anybody. So if we want the resources of Nigeria to be managed properly, then we should have a common goal. We could be coming from different directions, but our target is for sure the management. So that's, for me, is the first step to take. I can tell you that the bill has been read the first time again in the National Assembly. But first reading is actually like a mentioning. The second reading is where the bill will be discussed. And I feel before that, there should be that meeting between the Public Accounts Committees of both houses, the Auditor General's office, and relevant concerned ministries and MDAs and parastatals, like the Office of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General for the Federation, the Budget Office, and perhaps the Civil Service Commission. So we can agree on how we can sort out this quagmire that we are in. So for me, that is the very first step. And then subsequently, we can begin to see how this bill can go through the second and third reading. And I bet you, sir, if we are able to do this, we may not have issues again about getting the president to assent to it.
Making everything count, even transparency and anti-corruption, making it count for good. That's the program today. I'm Imewore Uyomokai. Don't forget to go to our social media handles or our YouTube channel to check out what you may have missed. Have a great week and join us again next week. Remember, it's always nice doing business with you.